Hello viewers, welcome back to my channel. My name is Patrick Tawaya Matope, and on this channel I do deliver content on social work and for the social care field as well. Right, so in today's topic I'm just going to be talking to you about some of the most effective interview strategies for social work job interviews. Um, um, I've actually came up with these from my own experiences of interviewing others and also being interviewed. I've attended so many interviews, over the 18 years that I've, been practicing as a social worker, and I've also interviewed as many people as possible. As you can imagine, as being a team manager in various local authorities that I've worked in. So some of these points are really, really crucial. So you need to take your pen and paper and listen attentively. Point number one, that you need to be mindful of, to make sure that you have had a successful interview, or to make sure that your interview is as effective as possible, is to make sure that before the interview you do your own research about the organization that is going to be interviewing you. If it's a local authority, look through their Ofsted review, look through their mission, values, and specific role that you are being interviewed for. You need to tailor your answers to align with their goals and their needs as well. So that's really, really important for you to research the organization that is going to be interviewing you, and also to research more about the role if it's not a role that you're already doing in another local authority or in another organization. So it's really, really important for you to be doing that, because remember, some of the questions that they might ask you may be pertinent to the challenges that they are facing as an organization. And if you haven't researched about that organization, you have no clue of knowing exactly what it is that they are talking about at that particular time. So you might lose points because of that. And then point number two is to make sure that you practice some of the most common interview questions that you can come across in any interview, whether you're interviewing for a social worker job or a family support worker job or a support worker job in an accommodation, supported living accommodation. There are some generic questions that are going to be asked. For example, tell me more about yourself. When you are being asked, tell me more about yourself, it's not a time for you to talk about how many you are in your family, you are the second born. The partner has no interest in knowing all that. They need to know what it is that you're going to be bringing on board. If the question otherwise is, if I'm going to be hiring you today, what is it that you're going to be bringing onto the table, to contribute to this organization's growth and success? So you need to be making sure that you answer the questions relevantly. Some of the most common questions that you may also be asked would be, why do you want to work here? Hence, I mentioned about point number one, where I mentioned about research about the organization and about the role that you're applying for. Because if you're asked, why do you want to work here? You need to link up your answer to what you have read about the organization, to what you read about the background of the organization. Because if you're asked, why do you want to work here? And you say, oh, of course, because of the money and so forth, that's not going to interest the panel. They're not going to be, they know you're applying the job because you want to work, you want money, but they want to know what substance are you bringing to this role. And then the other common question that is going to be asked is, what are your strengths and what are your weaknesses? Some of the most common questions, that they may also ask is, how do you stay focused and organized? How do you keep on top of your work? How do you work in a multi-agent setup? How do you resolve conflicts? So those things like that, those are some of the generic questions that you can be asked. And when you talk of multi-agents setup or multi-agents working, I think I did a video on that. When they ask you about conflict resolution, I think I did another video on that as well. So you can always go back to the channel and check some of those videos as well. And then point number three is, when you're answering your question, make sure that you use the STAR method for behavioral questions. When they ask you a behavioral related question, you need to use the STAR method. What do I mean by the STAR method? STAR method is just an abbreviation for situation, task, action, and result. Situation, task, action, and result. That's the STAR method. So what do I mean by situation? When you are answering a behavioral question, you need to give a situation, describe the context of what it is that you're going to be talking to them when you're answering that question. Give them the task, explain what needed to be done. That's task. And then also give them the action, detail all the steps that you took in terms of supporting that individual, in terms of supporting that young person, or in terms of supporting that family. And then the result, share the positives that came out from your engagement with that family. Share the positives that came out from your intervention with that particular family or with that particular young person. So that's the STAR method. So whenever you're being asked about behavioral or situational questions, remember the STAR method: situation, task, action, and result. Situation, task, action, and result. That's the STAR method. I hope some of you, it's the first time for you to know that, but remember, you need to use the STAR method when you're answering situational questions or behavioral questions. And then point number 4 is that you need to know your resume. You need to know your curriculum vitae. You need to know your CV. People call it the CV. You need to know it because they might ask questions pertaining to your CV. And if you've lied in your CV, you have no clue of knowing what is it that they are going to be asking. So you need to know your CV quite in and out, basically. It sounds funny for me to say you need to know your CV because if everything on your CV is genuine and it's what you've been doing, you don't need to read it because you know it already because you've been doing it. But I know there are people who, cook up their CVs. That's a no. You don't do that when you're applying for a job. Rather, mention that you don't have experience of doing this, but you are eager to learn. I always tell people that. So you need to be ready to discuss your experience because they may ask you about your past experiences as they are portrayed in your CV, or they might ask you about some of the skills that you've put in your CV, or they might ask you about some of the accomplishments which are listed in your CV as well. So you need to highlight those achievements. You need to also articulate how they relate to the job that you're applying in that particular incident. So it's really important. Point number 5. When they ask you about, do you have any questions to ask the panel towards the end of the interview, you need to ask thoughtful questions. What do I mean by that? You need to demonstrate your interest. This is where you need to shine as well. Remember, this is where you need, besides selling yourself in the whole part of the interview, this is where you need to shine by showing them that you've got genuine interest in this organization, you've got genuine interest in this company. So, for example, you can ask questions like, what does success look like for somebody who's going to be occupying this position? Or what do you think success would look like as, line managers who will be supervising somebody occupying this position? How does the team collaborate with other partner agencies? That's another question that you can ask. What are the growth opportunities which will be available if somebody is going to be occupying this position? So you need to ask relevant, genuine, and thoughtful questions, right? So that you can have a purposeful conversation in that interview. And then your body language and your tone. The tone of your voice, you don't need to be shouting. I know some people like myself, when I'm talking, somebody might think I'm shouting. I'm not. That's my voice. Some of us, that's the way we were raised or that's the way we grew up. But when you're in an interview, you need to be mindful of your body language. You need to be mindful of your tone. Your body language shows whether you want to be in that place or you don't want to be. The panel can pick that up straight away. The moment you answer the first question, they can tell that you really want to be interviewed or you are just doing it for the sake of doing it. And if the panel picks that up, chances are high that you may not even get that job. So you need to be mindful of that. So the other important thing is to make sure that you maintain eye contact, sit up straight, you need to smile, you need to be confident, use a confident tone, and avoid filler words like and so forth, because to an extent it shows that you don't know what you're talking about, or to an extent it shows that you are actually trying to piece together information to respond to in an interview, which is not going to be a good thing for you. So you need to be mindful of that. Right. Point number 6 is to make sure that you dress appropriately, dress professionally. That's to say the least. Dress professionally based on the Kanban culture. If you know anything about the Kanban culture, if you know people work for that organization already, there's nothing wrong with you checking in with them in terms of the dress code and all that. When in doubt, it's better to be slightly overdressed than to be underdressed. That's what the advice I always give people. Better to be overdressed than be underdressed. So the last point is you need to stay calm, positive, and remember, as a manager, like I said, I'm not going to come into that interview saying to myself, I want this person to fail. I'm coming into an interview because I think you've got the skills that are required for that particular post, and I also think that you can actually fill up that post. So I'm coming there to know more about you, to be able to offer you that role if you are able to articulate yourself and if you're able to evidence that you actually know what you are talking about. With those few words, I think 1 or 2 people would have gained from this. Thank you so much for listening. If you haven't subscribed, please do subscribe. Hit that notification bell so that when I post, you'll be the first person to know. Thank you so much for watching.